Hello, it's been a while. I actually filmed this November wrap-up earlier, but upon rewatching it, I was way too focused on what I was doing. I'm really bad at multitasking. I was wrapping my gifts along with wrapping up the books that I read for November. I was just way too focused on wrapping part, and I didn't really talk about the books very well, so scrapping that and doing it today. It's very, very late. It's already middle of January. It's literally the 14th, so you know, better late than never. I will be mentioning a book that is released or is published by HarperCollins or one of the imprints for HarperCollins, and in support of the strike, I will not be reviewing that book. I will just simply be mentioning the book that I read. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so for the month of November, I read a total of 9 things. The first one that I finished is Payback Switch by Lana Harper. This is actually an uncorrected proof that I've received from Goodreads after it was already released. I joined a giveaway and I received this, I believe, either a month and a half after the release. So I was like, I didn't really need to read it because the publication time was already done. So I was like, you know what, it's fine. I'm not required to review it anyway. The reason why I read it in November is because, you know, it was still fall around the time, and I was like, you know what, it's still a good time to read witchy books. So a lot of these books are actually like witchy stuff. So I rated this one 3 stars. This was fun. There was a tournament or a game, a magical tournament in this one that I've really enjoyed. This is set in a small town where witches, wizards live here, although they are mixed with people who don't, and the people who do not have these magic don't know that witches exist. There's like 4 families essentially that are like the guardians of this town, and every year, I think every year or every few years, they would host a game against the 4 families. There's always this one family who wins every tournament, and this year they decided to group together because there is some revenge that needs to be had. The main character used to date the son, the heir essentially of the most powerful family, and I think he cheated on her, if I'm remembering that correctly. The other heir of the family also was cheated on by the same guy, and they kind of like banded together. Like all 3 of them were like scorned by this guy, so they banded together, worked together to at least not have their family win this year's tournament. So I enjoy the magic of this one. It is very atmospheric, especially that one scene in the forest that was like really nicely done. But overall, I didn't particularly care very much about what the characters are doing and what's going on. I like the magic, but it was just not, I didn't empathize with what they were trying to do. So 3 stars. The next one is The Nature of Witches. This one is another one that I've been wanting to read for a while. I bought this book for 2 things mainly. The plot, which is, well, the character that we're following. So the plot, as it was advertised, was focusing on the powers of this main character who's an Everwitch. She can control all 4 seasons. And in this world, there are witches, and the existence of witches are known. And the witches only have 1 season where they're the most powerful. But every couple years or so, there's an Everwitch who's able to control all the weather. And their powers are affected with a changing climate, and they're losing a lot of witches because they're trying to control weather that is outside of control of who's the most powerful during that time. They needed her help, but she's struggling with her powers because there's a price with her power. Every time she uses her power and things go awry, it targets the people that she cares most about. So she's already lost her best friend and both her parents because of her powers, and so she's been afraid of her powers ever since. And with all of this going on and them losing witches, she has to step up to the plate. And I thought this was more about, we will have more discussions about, you know, the effects of weather and what we need to do to protect our earth, our world, from the things that we have done to it and has affected it, and we are being affected too, climate wise. What is really more of, it became more of a character focused book. We followed more of the character Clara as she comes to terms with her powers, and also the romance in it. And the romance is very cute. I actually really like the romance, and I enjoyed following Clara's character and watching her grow. But I really wanted more discussions around climate change, and that, because that was the main thing that really attracted me to this book. And also the second one is the cover. Look at that. This is just a regular copy. This is not a special edition, so 3.75. I liked the aspect that we got, but I was expecting something else or a different other element outside of the character growth and the romance, and I felt like it was just like a lost opportunity to talk more about, you know, the changes that we've done throughout the years to our planet and the things that we could do now. The next one that I read, I really actually enjoyed. The Ones That Feature Witches by Alix E. Harrow. I've been wanting to read this book for a while now, and I actually haven't really heard a lot of people talk about this one, but the few that I've heard, I know that they liked it, but I've never really heard anyone like really gush about this one, and I absolutely loved this book. The writing is amazing, and and it's also historical fantasy fiction. So I learned a lot about a certain point in history during this time, because this is set during the 1890s, which is when the suffragette movements and also the Salem witch trials happened, if I'm remembering that correctly. So there's a lot of different themes going on through here, especially because we're following 3 different sisters who are going through different things themselves. The existence of witches here are also known, but it's also kind of tied to, you know, the women's suffragette movement, women's rights movements. I love the magic, and I love the layers of each of the characters that we have here. It's not just, especially the more antagonistic characters, they're not just straight up antagonists. Like, there's layers to these characters, and each of our sisters, they also have their own faults, and it's not just like, you know, a certain flaw. You know, you can't expect everyone to be perfect, but they have a lot of growth. They had a lot of growth throughout this book as well, each of them, and it made me cry a lot by the end. I wasn't expecting that ending. I should have, because, you know, especially with the time setting of this one. But I really enjoyed this one. Beautiful writing, amazing magic building and world system, and I love following the sisters as well. So yeah, the next one that I read is Falling for My Enemy. This is, or Falling for the Enemy. This is from Manta. Manhwa is already completed. That's why I put this in here and finished it in this month. I enjoyed it because this is enemies to lovers. I enjoyed following the main character because the main character is someone who, if I remember correctly, she regressed. So she went back in time, and in this timeline she wanted to protect her family, because in the other timeline I think her entire family got killed. It's a whole political thing, and so this time she wants to protect her entire family, especially her siblings. She became a knight, a very strong, talented knight. I think one of the enemies that she had in the first timeline is also one of the other heads, and they keep butting heads, but it turns out that he actually really likes her a lot. That's why he's very awkward around her. To her, he seems very mean and cold, but he's just like actually a simp and very, very shy. So I love the development of the relationship together, especially because it doesn't really, even though he already likes her, I feel like there was a good like in between where they kind of got over their whole misunderstanding thing and became like really good friends and comrades, and then lovers. I love the progression of the relationship. It was really cute. 4 stars. The one that I'm not going to be reviewing for this time is the X-Hex, because this is again published by HarperCollins, but I rated this one 3.75 stars. And then we have Mooncakes. This one I rated 4.5 stars. This is another one that I've been meaning to read. This is a graphic novel, and one of those that's been highly recommended throughout the years as a great like fall witchy read, and I really enjoyed this one as well. The only thing mainly that I usually have a gripe with like mangas and or graphic novels is that I usually find them very short. There are a few mangas and or graphic novels that don't feel like there was like a few things missing within the storyline, even though it's still very short. And this one didn't really, like, I still wanted more from the story, but overall it's a really cute, great story about friendship, also family, community, and of course falling in love. Again, very cute. I really like this one. Next one, another one that I greatly enjoyed, The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. I have been meaning to read this book. This is a middle grade book that everybody raves about. Everybody who's ever read this either really, really liked it or loved it, and I loved it so much. I cried quite a few times throughout this story, because even as a middle grade book and having only, what, 390 pages, the way that we follow the different characters that we see and are present here, the way that they're written, the way that we follow them, is like really well done. And there are characters that you don't really know like what their role is in the overall plot, and it's more like shady, you know, like you don't know if there's someone that you should be rooting for or not, and what's their overall role in the history of this small town. So if you don't know what this is about, this is set in a small town where they have to every year give up a toddler, an infant, to the witch who lives in the forest, so that the witch will not attack them, essentially. But the witch is actually just minding her own business. She's not doing anything. She's not cursing these people. But because the babies are being left in the forest, she takes them and brings them to the other side of the forest so that they can be adopted by a new family. She didn't understand like why people have been leaving babies in the forest, but you know, she couldn't just leave the babies, so she takes them. But one day she takes a baby and accidentally feeds the baby Moonlight instead of Starlight. So she had to, instead of getting the kid adopted, she had to take the baby in. And throughout the years, we see the growth of her powers and the way that the witches had to protect her. So again, beautifully done. I love the incorporation of of course, the history of what really happened in the small town and where the whole idea of them having to give up their babies, their children, to the witch in the forest started from. And again, really enjoyed this one. Really beautiful, whimsical feel, and highly recommend to everyone. It's not, even though it is a middle grade book, I feel like it's something that everybody will enjoy and love reading. So, and then the next one that I've read is more dark, or darkest, compared to the other books that I've read. Things have gotten worse since we last spoke, and Other Misfortunes by 𝐿 𝐿. This specific edition has like short stories from 𝐿, but the main one is Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, and it's very disturbing. I rated this one a 4 stars. I just wasn't really 100% sure what happened at the end, but I think that's like the kind of ending that you would have for that story. But still, I was just like, what happened? I don't get it. And the rest of the short stories didn't really live up to the first one. The main story. I've heard a lot of people really enjoyed Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, so I was like, I should read it. It's a quick read as well. It's very disturbing, as they said, and it's perfect for the spooky season. So I read it and I did enjoy it, and it's very disturbing. I was like audibly saying, what the fuck is going on? I was like, what is happening? What is this? Like, that is weird. I mean, I guess you could say did what it's supposed to do, or what it was going to do, which is to disturb the reader. It did for me. And then the last one that I read for November is Yakuza Lover. I read the volume 1, and I totally forgot that I actually read the first, like the 3 of the 4 chapters that are in this volume. And I was about to DNF it because I was like, I actually dropped this series. I totally forgot about it. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just finish it so that I can, you know, it's just one more chapter that I didn't really read. And I didn't change my mind because this is the representation of insta love. So the main character, I forgot what her job was, but she's this like really innocent, cute girl who meets this Yakuza, and they fall in love. I think in the first chapter they already said I love you, and they've never had a proper conversation. They probably exchanged like 2 sentences each the first time that they met. He gave her his jacket, and so when she returns the jacket, there was already like this weird thing between them where they already like each other. And again, prior to that, they only exchanged 2 sentences each to each other, and then by the end of the chapter they were already saying I love you. And again, they have never had a proper conversation before that, because when she returned the jacket to him, he was busy, and so again they only really exchanged a few sentences to each other. So I was like, what? And so just throughout the book, even though there were like really cute moments, overall I was just like, I didn't really believe it, because they've never had a conversation with each other. They don't know each other. So I didn't really understand how they could already be in love. So yeah, I was planning on like reading the entire thing because I believe this is finished. There's like 10 volumes. I already had them like borrowed through the library, but then it was like, yeah, no. I can't. I totally forgot that it was this manga that I started to read that I dropped. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm just gonna finish it just so that I can talk about it a little bit. So those are all the books I read in November. It was overall a really good month. I had 2 5-star books. I had a couple of 4.5 stars and up, and a few okay books, and one like really bad one, which is the last one that I read. It wasn't really like super bad. It was just like not believable. Like, how am I supposed to root for the romance when I don't believe it, you know? So anyway, that is it for this month. I'm really sorry that it's late, but I am trying to get things in order. I still have to do my, you know, best of the year, worst of the year, also the books that I'm excited to read this year. So yeah, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. I will be filming my December wrap up immediately after this one, so I will see you then.